Hello y'all, I'm Pluto the Fool, and today we'll be talking about Ralsei from Deltarune. I know my last video wasn't very, appreciated, but I swear this one doesn't have as hot of a take. I hope so, anyway. I will make a second gaster video eventually, going into more detail and talking about a lot of the things that I missed, and just generally providing more substance. But I'm gonna try to tackle some lighter, more accessible theories first, before diving back into that mess. Anyway, let's get into what this video is about. Ralsei is, to me, often misinterpreted and misunderstood in the fandom's mind. Many people talk about how he's suspicious or hiding something from us, calling out many details that can easily be explained. Of course, not everyone thinks Ralsei will be a bad guy, with the majority of the fandom seeing him as simply a little guy. But I've seen no one explain why he's innocent, or give any counter-evidence to the idea that he's suspicious. And that's why I'm here today, to defend my favorite toothpaste boy from these heinous allegations against him. Now, let's look at the claims made and debunk them one by one. Ralsei looks like Asriel. This is a point that many have actually started to disregard recently, which is why it's first. Ralsei does look similar to Asriel, that I don't think anyone can deny, but the idea here is that Ralsei is Asriel because of this. Usually metaphorically, as in he represents Asriel, but sometimes he's, piles of Asriel's dust. So, why do I think they aren't connected? Simple. They're just not close to each other at all. Other than Asriel and Undertale being nice, the two have completely different personalities. Now, realistically, this doesn't mean anything at all, but narratively, stuff like this is important. If Toby wanted to connect the two, he would have made it a lot more clear in the characters themselves, whether by making them similar or by making them opposites. For example, Undertale's Asriel. In Undertale, Asriel and Flowey are the same person, which ends up being a great reveal as they have completely opposite personalities, Flowey being heartless and cruel, and Asriel being sweet and kind. Asriel and Ralsei, on the other hand, don't work as well. They're both nice people, but they're nice in different ways, with Asriel just being a cool guy, and Ralsei being overly helpful. Asriel also likes sports more, and Ralsei's a nerd. No offense. That point doesn't mean anything. I thought that was funny. I don't remember why I added that in the script. There's not really that many differences or similarities between them, as we actually don't know that much about Asriel yet. Toby, please give us more Asriel content, I beg of you. But I feel like by now there would be more hints to them being connected other than just appearance. Plus, Asgore and Toriel look similar, with other characters even thinking that Toriel's a twin or something. In Undertale, that doesn't happen in Deltarune. But that doesn't mean they're literally the same person, nor does it mean that they're related or something. I hope not, anyway. Also, by the way, Ralsei and Asriel are anagrams of each other, but I actually have an idea for why that is. So, Toby has stated before that Ralsei actually comes from the name Rals, which was from a game that his brother made. Therefore, Ralsei most likely came first. But then, what about Asriel? Well, Asriel is a mix of Asgore and Toriel. So then, how does that relate to Ralsei? Simple. It doesn't. It is my personal belief that the anagram of Ralsei and Asriel was on complete accident. I have basically no other evidence, but it's funny enough that I'm taking it as fact. Hey, editing Pluto here. Just popping in to say that, I know I didn't really go into that much detail on why these two aren't really connected and don't really make sense to be connected. I'm just not really good at wording things, which is pretty evident by every single one of my videos. But there is a video that I do recommend if you wish to
hear more detail about these two not being connected, which is the video by Kuki Autumn, dissecting and debunking the Ralsei is Asriel theory. It's a really good one. I highly recommend it if you want to know more, because I know I didn't go into that much detail here. So go watch that video, I guess, after this one. Watch this video first, and then go watch theirs. And also subscribe to them, because they're really cool. So, yeah, that's it. Alright, back to the video.
Ralsei is the headband. This is a point made to connect Ralsei to Chris, which, while very good, and I want to believe in it because it's an amazing idea, there isn't much actual weight to it. The red headband is mentioned exactly one time in easily missable dialogue. I say easily missable because I missed it, and I only found out that dialogue existed through a Deltarune theory, which is how I imagine a lot of people probably found out about that. Many say that Toriel says that it's missing, which, if you don't look at the dialogue itself, feels like the game is making the fact that the headband is missing an important thing, but the actual line saying that it's missing is just, oh, you wore it for months, whatever happened to it? Which, in the context of the dialogue choice for getting this line literally just being me, it's likely emphasizing that Chris really wanted to be a monster like the rest of their family. I feel like if Toby wanted the emphasis to be on the fact that the headband is missing, the line would be separated from the part mentioning how Chris wore the horns a lot, and also be along the lines of, you were so sad when you lost it, or I can't seem to find it anywhere lately. This shows that the headband is meant to be character development for Chris, rather than being connected to Ralsei. Also, the evidence for it being Ralsei is that it's a pair of horns, and Ralsei has horns. Which, like, why would Chris put their headband in the school closet? Or wherever the Grand Fountain is? If they didn't know about the Dark Worlds, did they do it for fun or something? And if they did know about the Dark World, and they made the Grand Fountain with Ralsei and all that, how? Okay, yeah, I know what the answer is. I know what your answer is. It's Gaster. He told Chris everything. Okay, fine. Sure, let's go with that. Quick question. How did Gaster know about the Dark Worlds if there wasn't one yet? The Grand Fountain is the main one, which very clearly means it's the first. Also, if there weren't any fountains previously, how did the Light World not fall apart? Light and Dark would have been out of balance for God knows how long, so how could Chris have made the first fountain? And you may have noticed that yet again I'm not talking about Ralsei here. That's because the point of this is always actually about Chris, and not Ralsei, even though people claim it's about him, but it's not, because... Sorry. I shouldn't get heated in this video. Not yet, anyway. Ralsei doesn't turn to stone. This is something that many people mention, which lets me talk about something a lot of people ignore. Ralsei is the Prince of the Dark. He comes from and was likely made by the Grand Fountain, so obviously he's going to fit into every Dark World. He's also following the prophecy, which means that he's technically meant to be in these Dark Worlds that he visits. But I think the whole prince thing is the important part here. Since he's the Prince of Darkness, he likely functions a bit differently to every other Darkner. He might even be potentially made out of pure darkness, which would answer why he doesn't work well as a specific object, and how he's been in existence for what seems like a long time, even potentially making him as old as the universe itself, as we don't know how long the Dark Fountain has existed. So yeah, him being from the Grand Fountain connects him to all Dark Worlds, which means that he wouldn't turn to stone, which also brings me to the next point I want to mention, Ralsei having a lot of knowledge. Ralsei is, again, the Prince of the Dark. The ancient prophecy was likely made by someone who knew Ralsei, perhaps the King or Queen of Darkness or something. Considering that the Grand Fountain was always the only Dark Fountain, and the other fountains only existed recently, take a shot every time I say the word fountain, holy shit. The prophecy has to have been made in Castletown, or at least in that same Dark World. Yeah, I know Castletown is what people call the Dark World, but I'm saying like it was either made by people within the kingdom or just made by people within at least that same realm. That's what I meant by that. I know that's kind of a confusing statement. Anyway, so it makes sense that Ralsei, the prince of that world, would know about it, especially if it involved him. As for the other knowledge, Ralsei probably has a library somewhere in his castle. Or, again, he could have been informed long ago when the main Dark World was in its prime. If it had a prime, anyway. Ralsei is a prince, which means there must be a king, or queen, or genderless ruler of some kind. Maybe that person passed down the knowledge to Ralsei, but even if he was just made with this knowledge already there, so what? He's smart, so he has to be evil? Maybe he knows what he does for player convenience. Not like in-universe, I mean in real life. As in, Toby wrote Ralsei as simply knowing everything already because it was just easier for us players to learn about how the Dark World works. That's a much more boring explanation, but it's much more reasonable than saying that extra-dimensional space Satan told him everything. Ralsei disappears on death. Okay, this is kind of an older point that most people don't really mention anymore, but it's likely that he's made out of darkness, so when he gets down, he just kind of fades, I guess. Also, the other Darkners fade away when killed too, so it's likely just a Darkner thing. Again, not a common point towards him being suspicious anymore, but I wanted to still mention it. Ralsei travels between Dark Worlds. I see this used as evidence for a lot of things, and I think there's an easy explanation for it. Connections to the Dark Worlds likely already exist within Castletown. It's already somewhat implied that Dark Worlds already exist before the fountains are made, with the fountains serving as more of a gateway. There's a link to Card Kingdom, so who's to say there isn't a link to the others as well? I know that evidence is incredibly flimsy, but I think it's somewhat backed up by the fact that the Cyberworld residents were able to get back on their own without the need to travel through the Light World. Either it's a direct connection or they're teleporting. Either way, Ralsei is likely just doing the same thing. Also, I didn't add this to the script because I didn't think about it at the time, but I think them teleporting might actually be the more likely explanation here. So, here's why I think that at the beginning of Chapter 2, we have to take all of the objects from Chapter 1's empty classroom into the closet in order to get it to Castletown. I think that that is because the recruitment system hadn't been made by Ralsei yet. Ralsei hadn't figured it out. So it could be that the direct connection isn't there, but there is still a way for people to get between Dark Worlds, it's just through teleporting. It could also be that Ralsei is the only one able to do this, as he's the Prince of the Dark, so he likely just has that sort of control over the Dark Worlds, I guess. Not enough control to manipulate anything, but just enough to move between them seamlessly. Do I have evidence for this? Not really, but saying that he just jumps into Chris's pocket last second is kind of dumb, so or saying that he just breaks the laws of Darkness and just walks out into the Light World without anyone noticing somehow is also just nonsense. Ralsei disregards Spamton. Okay, this is a point that really pisses me off, because no he doesn't. Ralsei is trying to comfort Chris in the best way he knows how. He's never dealt with something like this before, so all he can think of is trying to not think too hard about it, and move on. He doesn't want Chris to be scared, but he's scared too. Neither of them know how to cope with what they just saw. A lot of people, most people actually, completely forget what these three just witnessed not 2 minutes ago. These three kids, were likely around 12 to 15 or so, just saw a man drop dead on the ground. I don't know how y'all would deal with that, but honestly, yeah, I would also try to just not think about that and move on. Just put it in the vault, you know? Sure, it's not healthy to do so, but Ralsei has been isolated for God knows how long. We've seen how he treats himself. Do you really think he knows how to cope with something as traumatic as watching someone go insane and die right in front of him? I don't think so. Ralsei hides the roaring. Okay. Originally, I was going to try to find a better explanation for this. I was going to talk about how Ralsei likely didn't want to scare off the heroes too early, or how he might have just assumed they'd never get into a situation where the roaring would be a problem. But honestly, it's just pacing. That's it. He explains the roaring in Chapter 2 because it didn't fit anywhere else. If he tacked it onto the legend, sure, in universe it would have made more sense. But for us players, it would have been too much at once. It was also a reveal, thus talking about it 10 minutes into the game wouldn't have signified how important it was. Chapter 2 also ends with Chris doing the thing that caused Ralsei to mention the roaring in the first place, showing likely that Chris, for whatever reason, might want the roaring to happen or simply doesn't care. The roaring being explained where it was very likely because it just fit there better than explaining it earlier. It doesn't have to be some deep meta explanation. Sometimes it's okay for things to just be there because it worked. Ralsei knows meta things. Speaking of everything not needing to be deep lore, I see this point thrown around as support for the player theory. The player theory being the idea that the player is an important character and is controlling Chris and all that. I'm calling it a theory because it hasn't been confirmed yet. And I also see it as support for the idea that Ralsei knows about the player and is hiding things from us because something gaster, I don't know. Ralsei does actually give us a direct tutorial and tells us about what specific keys do and what some HUD elements are for. This is clearly proof that he has immense meta-knowledge and is connected to Gaster. Lancer also leaves us a sign telling us to press C, meaning he also has lore knowledge and is connected to Gaster. Those puzzle piece dudes who give us a tutorial on in-game stats and HUD elements, also Gaster. Even in Undertale, that random sign that tells us about pressing Z, also Gaster. Those froggets that mention and even change game elements, obviously Gaster. And it doesn't stop there. Other games are also connected like this, such as Buffy the Vampire Slayer 2002, Game Story, Dragon Ball Z Boost Fury, Dust and Elysian Tale, Holy Umbrella? EG? I don't know what that game is. Jable's Adventure, Klonoa 2, basically every single Legend of Zelda game, Okami Exposition Fairy, The Simpsons Hit and Run, Star Fox Adventures, Tomb Raider, Astro Boy Omega Factor, Lampshaded, Monster Hunter, Shadow the Hedgehog, the game adaptations of the Spider-Man trilogy, Blackout, Chicory, A Colorful Tale, Ghost Trick, Indiana Jones and His Desktop Adventures, Lost Word, Legend of K, Loom from LucasArts, I've never heard of that. My Little Investigations, what? Titanic, Adventure Out of Time, Dooms and Treasures, Blaze Blue Continuum Ship, Mortal Kombat Deception, Borderlands 2. Alright, Pluto, I think we get it. I'm not fucking done. Command & Conquer Renegade, Deus Ex, Half-Life, Portal 2, Receiver, Tron 2.0, the fucking Wii photo channel. Why is that on this list? Star Fox 64, Achaea, City of Heroes, RuneScape, World of Warcraft, Banjo-Kazooie, Color My Heart and its sequels, Conker's Bad Fur Day, Elephant Quest, The Emperor's New Groove, the video game, I didn't know that one existed, Cal the Kangaroo, what the fuck, Kirby, A Little Big Planet, Mega Man X5, Mega Man Zero, Mischief Makers, practically every single Nintendo DS game, Pizza Tower, Rayman 2 The Great Escape, Rayman 3 Hoodlum Havoc, Shantae, Risky's Revenge, and Shantae the Seven Sirens, Shovel Knight, Sly Cooper, Sonic the Hedgehog, and basically every fucking one of them, Spyro the Dragon. Occasionally it happens in Super Mario Bros., I guess? The Company of Myself, Hotel Mario, Myth the Fallen Lords and Myth 2, Soul Blighter, World in Conflict, Rhythm Heaven, Space Channel 5, Baldur's Gate, A Bard's Tale, A Blurred Line, Boxy Quest, Breath of Fire 4, Dark Cloud, Final Fantasy 7, I think? VII, I don't fucking. .hack GU, Doubloon, more Final Fantasy games, Eternal Sonata, Gothic, Hide and Seek Battle Monster Tactics, Kingdom Hearts, Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, Last Scenario, Live Alive, Luffy and the Fortress of Doom, Magna Carta 2, Marduk, Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga, several Mega Man Battle Network games, The Misadventures of Tron Bonne, Mother, Neverwinter Nights, Persona, Pokemon, Shadow Hearts, Shin Megami Tensei Imagine, Star Ocean Till the End of Time, more Super Mario Bros. Games, in the Tales of series, Harvest Moon, Vegas Strike, X-Wing TIE Fighter and X-Wing Alliance, Metal Gear, although that's like that should be dubiously counted, Resident Evil Outbreak, Dead Space, Psyops, Makai Kingdom, Advance Wars, Doki Doki, that one doesn't count, let's be fucking real, The Great Ace Attorney, even in fucking pinball games. Clearly, without a shadow of a doubt, everything listed here is deep meta lore for Deltarune. Or, insane idea here, it's just a common trope to have a character say the controls because making a good tutorial is kinda hard. But no, that's crazy talk. It's obviously Gaster, you know, I'm just fucking cherry picking or whatever. I'm still mad about that, by the way. Ralsei pulls the player away. Okay. If I say what I want to say about the player side of this, I'm going to make you guys incredibly angry. So, I'll hold off until another video. But as for what Ralsei is doing here, it's nothing. Come on, guys. The 2 times this happens is to give focus to Susie for a moment. You guys remember Susie, right? The purple one? I don't see people talking about her. It's always the player or you know who. These moments here are more than likely just an easy way to give a reason for not focusing on Ralsei and Chris, and rather giving screen time to Susie to give her some character development. I don't think it's Ralsei physically pulling the player's camera away, as I just can't imagine that Ralsei has enough control over the player to move them away from Chris and have the player stop playing the game. But he only does this, like, twice, and seemingly only does it to talk to Chris about some evil scheme or some shit. So, now that those heinous allegations are out of the way, let me explain what I really think is going on here. Why is Ralsei so nice to us? Why is he seemingly desperate to keep things in order? Why does he never stand up for himself, and why does he straight up allow Chris to go as far as hitting him? I have the answer. Ralsei is a people pleaser. He never had friends before, and he has a mission to fulfill. He's so nice and lets people walk all over him because he's desperate to keep these friends that he now has. He doesn't want to be lonely again. But he also has to be a hero. He has to save the world. It's his purpose. But he doesn't know how to do that. He gets the gist of it, but there's the factor that the legend never explained. That no one was there to explain. People. People are terrifying. They do things he doesn't expect. From what he knows, people fill specific roles and do specific things. They have purposes set from birth. But that's not how it works. Shown by one of the legendary heroes just up and leaving. Ralsei is trying to keep order in a world of chaos. He has to have a purpose. He has to fill a role. Everyone fills a role. There are rules, but no one follows them. There are warnings that no one reads. Ralsei has no idea what to do in this situation. He has to be nice, right? That's how friends work. You build up friendships like points. But no, it's more nuanced than that. People aren't numbers. They're chaos. They're terrifying. They're unpredictable. But I don't think Ralsei's just scared of it. I think he envies it. He wishes he could be himself, instead of what the legend wanted out of him. He doesn't want to be a hero. He doesn't want to be the prince of an empty kingdom. He wants to be Ralsei. He sees Susie doing what she wants. He sees Noelle changing into a stronger person. He sees Birdly.
That fucking bird that I hate.
He sees Chris making their own choices. He wants to do the same, but he doesn't know how. You can't discover yourself in isolation. He isn't human, but he's quite similar psychologically. People need to interact with people to figure themselves out. You need other perspectives. Otherwise, you likely won't know how to be you. That's a very, very simplified way of saying it, but a general idea. Ralsei was isolated his whole life. He's now facing the fact that he should be Ralsei-like. He should be himself, his own person. But he doesn't know how. And he's scared. So he uses what he knows. Kindness. But he doesn't know how to use it properly. So he comes off as overly nice to a suspicious degree. When he gets into a situation where he doesn't know how to fix it with kindness, he tries to get away from it, hence the Spamton neophyte. He doesn't know how to socialize or be a person, but he's trying. He's doing all he can with what little he knows. Calling him evil is just awful, and in my opinion, an insult to his character. Even if it's not calling him evil, per se, Ralsei doesn't have any ulterior motives. He's not hiding anything, he's not manipulating us. He's just trying to be himself without knowing how. Now, you might be saying, how? How could someone act this way? Ralsei doing this without some nefarious motive makes no sense, because no one would ever act like this in real life. To which I say, duh, this is a video game. Kidding, of course. I do have a genuine example of a person that does act like this in real life. You guys might recognize this person, and they are pretty close to me and did allow me to talk about how they relate to Ralsei in this video. So let me introduce me. It's me. You probably all immediately guessed that. I don't know why I did that whole bit, I'm sorry. I relate heavily to Ralsei. We act pretty similarly for pretty similar reasons. I'm really nice to people, even if they do things to me that I don't appreciate. Why? Because I'm terrified of having someone be upset with me, especially if they're a friend of mine. I only had like 2 max most of my life, and even then, that was only really in middle school, so I'm scared of losing them. By the way, that was only really in middle school. I mean, they only started in middle school, as in before I never really had any. I'm still friends with my 2 from middle school. They're still cool. Thus, even if they say things that made me feel bad, I accept them to move on. Well, not anymore, actually. I used to be more like that, but I changed. I stood up for myself. I learned how to talk to people. I went through character development. Ralsei simply hasn't gotten that development yet. He's still in the stage of letting people walk all over him. He's still in the stage of ignoring horrible events because he doesn't want others to worry. Still in the stage of not feeling entirely like a person. All of which I also did. I think my connection to Ralsei is why I get so angry when people force him to be connected to Gaster or Asriel, or call him evil and suspicious. Because he's just Ralsei. Let him be himself. That's all he wants. It's so painfully clear that Ralsei figuring out how to be himself is the whole point of his character arc. As much as people talk about freedom and my personal Dinkelberg, Deltarune is also absolutely about identity. Ralsei fits this perfectly. And so, to conclude this stupidly long rant, Ralsei is not Gaster. Ralsei is not Asriel. Ralsei is not evil. Ralsei is Ralsei. Let him have that. See you in the next video, where the fandom bands together to burn me alive for saying that the player isn't controlling Chris.